Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 343 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. And here at the Unpopular Podcast, I'm not really asking you to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. With the NBA season being over, the focus now is shifted to the NBA draft. And with every draft, it's so important because this is the time. This is pretty much the start of the opportunity to drastically change the fortunes of your team's future. You know, you're able to get young players, and you hear about a lot of teams moving up in the draft, moving down. Like, this is the time where teams are focused on building. Teams are focused on trying to build for the future. And with this, you hear a lot about trades. You hear about maybe star players that aren't on good teams, or you hear about, how is X team going to move up in the draft? There's a lot of movement, or a lot of rumors, a lot of possibility for your team to change. And one of the biggest names that you're hearing in this year's circuit as far as could be on the move is Zion Williamson. Zion Williamson, who was the former number 1 overall draft pick, of course, plays for the Pelicans. He's had a litany of injuries, but when healthy, Zion Williamson has proven to be one of the best players in basketball when healthy. And the biggest reason for this story, and the biggest, I guess you can say, indictment against Zion Williamson is that when healthy part. I've talked about this before, but you're seeing you're seeing the Zion Williamson could be traded from New Orleans story pick up steam. It's been said time and time again, but your best ability is availability. Again, I've said when Zion Williamson is on the floor, when Zion Williamson is healthy, when he is engaged, when he is playing basketball for the New Orleans Pelicans, he is one of the best players in basketball. Zion Williamson last season, even though he didn't play that much, but the 2022-2023 season, he averaged 26 points a game, 7 rebounds, and pretty much 5 assists, while shooting 61% from the field. As a person, he's not a center, he's a forward. But and you're asking yourself, a lot of people ask themselves, why Zion? Why would Zion be the name that is thrown out there in trade talks for a draft pick? Now, I'm not going to go into detail about all the off the field or off the court noise and news that has been surrounding Zion this year. I'm not going to. It's none of my business. It's really not anybody's business. But what I will say about that is, I've said before, and it's been said before, that a team is going to tolerate a lot of off the court, off the field issues if you're producing at a high level on the court. When we have you and your production is high, you will continue to get second chances. You'll continue to get opportunities because you're a good player. Now, I for sure will never compare what Zion Williamson's what's happening with him off the court compared to what happened with Deshaun Watson off the field. But where the comparisons lie is with everything that happened with Deshaun Watson off the field, he still received one of the highest, or if not the most, guaranteed money in NFL history with the Browns. Now, again, I'm not comparing what Zion Williamson did off the court to what's going on with Zion Williamson off the court to what's going on with Deshaun Watson off the field. But what I'm saying is, if you are productive, if you're a really good player, you're gonna get second chance. You're gonna get chance after chance after chance. And where is this tying into Zion? Because Zion Williamson doesn't really have any detrimental off the court situations. But Zion Williamson, since 2019 when he was drafted, has missed more games than he's played due to injury. Now, I know that you can't predict injury. You know, it happens to everyone. It's everyone gets hurt. You can't predict it. But one thing that you can do is try your hardest to prevent it. And one way that you can prevent it is keeping your body clean and keeping your body healthy when you're playing at an all-time level, when you're playing professional sports. Your body, and I talk about this a lot with Russell Wilson and LeBron James, because there's always stories about how much money they put into recovery, they put into their body, they put into just keeping their body in tip-top shape, which is why you're seeing LeBron playing as long as he's been playing. Your body for an athlete is your income. And while, yes, you can't, injuries happen on an everyday basis, but you can do your best to prevent that. And when we talk about Zion Williamson and his weight, it doesn't seem like he has done the best at preventing these injuries. When we talk about a lot of coming into camp looking out of shape, and one thing that somebody said, I don't remember who said it, but basketball isn't when you're playing basketball, you're not playing basketball to get into shape. You're playing basketball to stay in shape. That's two different things. I think they were talking about James Harden. Zion Williamson's injuries, a lot of times you can contribute it to his lack of attention to his weight. Now, there's been multiple times where we've seen Zion Williamson come into the season, or we've seen pictures, or we've seen video, and he looks healthy, he looks spry. But there's a reason why a majority of his injuries are lower body. I think the last injury was a hamstring injury. And then when we talk about the Pelicans could possibly trade for Zion Williamson, the only to get more draft compensation. What you have to ask yourself is, usually there's maybe one or two generational players in a draft. Maybe one. In fact, it's very rare that there's more than one generational players. Like, how do I say this? Like, if we talk about this year's draft, there seems like there's really only one generational player, and that's Victor Wembanyama, which is why when the San Antonio Spurs won the first overall pick, there was absolutely no doubt who was going to be picked. I know there's like, it could be him. No. There was no doubt. It was Victor Wembanyama. It's going to be Victor Wembanyama. And it doesn't matter, because we're hearing stories about, Victor might not play, might not participate in the summer league and stuff, but it's going to be Victor. Now, there are also players in this draft that could be very beneficial to a team, like Scoot Henderson, Brandon Miller, the Twins. But there's really only one player in this draft that a lot of people assume are going to be generational talents, or is going to be a generational talent, and that is Victor Wembanyama. But when you're trading when you're discussing or when there's a possibility that you can trade somebody like a Zion Williamson, you have to get the compensation, or the player or the draft pick that you're going to get has to hit, because this is a franchise changing move if it happens. You're trading a former number 1 overall player who, again, when healthy, which is the primitive term in this situation, gives you 26 points a game on 61% shooting. I think it's I don't know. Obviously, I have no connects, I have no sources, but it just seems like if you're going to, because they're saying that they're the stories and rumors are that the Pelicans would trade up to try to get Scoot Henderson. And don't get me wrong, Scoot Henderson's cool, but I just don't know if he's a generational player, if he's a generational changing player or franchise changing player. And what we've seen for when Zion Williamson is healthy is he is that. Now, and I've talked about this before. I think I talked about this when we were talking about Kawhi Leonard. I think we're at a point now. I know Zion Williamson's career is still young. I mean, he got drafted in 2019. But we're at a point where I don't know if you can expect Zion to play majority of the season because we haven't seen it. And a lot of that is because of course, his weight troubles. Now, it's give credit where credit is due. Zion Williamson, again, there have been multiple videos, multiple pictures where he looks like he's healthy. He looks like he's in shape. But that has to continue throughout the offseason and going into the season, because if not, you're going to continue to deal with a player that, as talented as he is not always available because of injury. I myself wouldn't trade Zion Williamson for, the possibility of getting Scoot Henderson in the draft. I think Scoot Henderson is incredible playing in the G League right now. I think his upside is sky high. But I've seen Zion Williamson. We've seen Zion Williamson play basketball at the highest level and look like one of the top 10 players in the NBA when healthy. But this is also an indictment on Zion Williamson and his lack of consistency as far as availability being on the court. Because I don't think, when you see the numbers that he's putting up, I don't think that this would even be a question if Zion Williamson was available. Would he? I don't think his name would be on the trade block because he's that good. But we will definitely just have to see how it goes or what happens. But me personally, I wouldn't trade Zion Williamson because of I think even at his height, even at his best, I don't think Scoot Henderson is going to be on the same level as Zion Williamson. And Scoot has the possibility to be an incredible basketball player. They're saying shades of Russell Westbrook just with a better jump shot. And we know Russell Westbrook is on the All-NBA 70 or 75 list. So, but even with all that, I would not trade Zion Williamson for the possibility of drafting Scoot Henderson. But if I was Zion Williamson, I would look hard in the mirror and say, hey, bro, there's a reason why my name, like out of all the potential stars or stars in the NBA, there's a reason why my name is in the trade talk. And again, while I am not saying what Zion Williamson did or what Zion Williamson's doing off the court is bad or detrimental in any way, shape, or form, it's his personal business. But when that's starting to become, or when that is the story around Zion Williamson right now, and you can't really lean on, well, I'm available all the time on the basketball court, because you're not. teams don't want to deal with that at all. At all. That's just noise. And while Zion Williamson's game is louder than the noise that we're hearing right now, his availability is not. And that is one of the biggest reasons, in my opinion, why you're hearing Zion Williamson's name being involved in possible trade talks. Speaking of trade talks, something that probably should have been happened. Seems like it's coming to fruition sooner than later at this point. And that is Bradley Beal possibly getting traded from the Washington Wizards. Now, I am not one to sit here and say I'm always for a star player getting traded. Like, why would you trade a star player? I've been on record in saying if you have a star player, you keep that star player, and you try everything in your power to build a team, an adequate team around said star player. And people know that I'm a Wizards fan. I'm from the Maryland, D.C., Maryland area. I grew up a Wizards fan. I am a Wizards fan. It's been tough. I think I put a short out about a couple days ago. It's tough being a Wizards fan, but that is me. But one of the biggest reasons why I said that this probably should have happened a good number of years ago is because sometimes you can see clear as day the ceiling for a player and a team. And a lot of times that ceiling is not a championship caliber ceiling. And there are some times where the ceiling isn't as high as you think, or isn't even as high as playoffs or second round of the playoffs. The Washington Wizards have been in this group, a group that you never want to end up in sports, and that is the middle of the pack. You never want to end up in the middle of the pack because you're too good to have a high draft pick, and we just talked about with Zion Williamson. If you're not that good, you want to try to at least be closer to the number one spot in the draft, so you can possibly have a better shot of getting those generational talents or franchise-changing talents. So Washington has been too good of a team to be a part of that conversation, but they're nowhere close in being in that championship caliber, high round caliber team. Like when we think about the Boston Celtics, who last year made it to the NBA Finals, they lost. This year made it to the conference finals, lost. But you can see their ceiling is at least the NBA Finals. Or another team that their ceiling might not be the NBA Finals, but their ceiling is playoff. Let's go with the Chicago Bulls. Chicago Bulls' ceiling is at least, we don't think they're a championship caliber team, but their ceiling is at least the playoffs. Now, yes, they didn't make the playoffs this year. They made the play-in, but, the playoffs has pretty much been their ceiling. The Toronto Raptors, boom. The Toronto Raptors ceiling, ever since Kawhi Leonard has been left, has pretty much been playoffs or, first, second round of the playoffs. No one thinks they're a championship team, but the Washington Wizards aren't even in that conversation. They might be able to be in the play-in, but they haven't been in that, oh, well, the Wizards could do this. No, they've just been middle of the pack. You see that the Minnesota Vikings are a middle of the pack team. No. Yeah, the Minnesota Vikings have pretty much been a middle of the pack team. The Mariners, Seattle Mariners, have been a middle of the pack team. What's a hockey team that's middle of the pack? Probably maybe the Capitals now. Middle of the pack. Washington's ceiling has been middle of the pack for a while now. And another thing about ceilings is their ceilings on stars. Like, we know the ceiling for LeBron James is obviously NBA championship. We know the ceiling for Nikola Jokic is obviously NBA championship. We know the ceiling for Kevin Durant is obviously NBA championship. Steph Curry, championship. We know the ceiling for maybe a Jason Tatum could possibly be the championship since he's been there. We know, and even with that ceiling, another way to describe it is there are stars that you can build a championship caliber team around. And then there are stars that are very good, but might not be an A player. And that is where the Washington Wizards and Bradley Beal have found themselves for a couple years now, for a good number of years now. Bradley Beal is a good player. He's a great player. He's a great scorer. He's one of the best mid-range shooters, and his ability to cut and get to the rim he is a great player. But Bradley Beal, in my opinion, is not one of those players that you can build a team around. He is a good second option. He's a great third option. I think if he is a second or third option, your team is possibly a championship caliber team. If he is your first option, you're not. So while the Washington Wizards have tried to build their team around Bradley Beal, they've been trying to build their team around a player that isn't a championship caliber player. And don't get me wrong, I know it sounds crazy, but that's no offense to Bradley Beal. That's just how it is. The Indianapolis Pacers tried to build their team around Paul George, the height of Paul George. And while the height of Paul George before the injury was a really good player, he was not a player that was good enough to build your team around and be a championship caliber team. Hell, he even came out and said that he's not a 1. He might be a 2 or a 3, which I've never really heard someone come out and say that, but hey. So we're at this point now where Bradley Beal, which we should have been a couple years ago, but we're at this point now where Bradley Beal, who got a new contract, who has a no trade clause, and has the ability to pretty much dictate his own trade and who he gets traded to, and the compensation that Washington gets through the dealings of his contract, which is something else you never really heard of. Bradley Beal is more than likely going to get traded sooner than later. And you're hearing a bunch of teams. You're hearing the Bucks. You're hearing the Heat. You're hearing Golden State. You're hearing a lot of teams that could possibly be in the talks of acquiring Bradley Beal's talents. And what's even worse the worst part about this situation, for the Wizards at least, is Bradley Beal is a depreciating asset not because of his talent, but because everyone knows that everyone can see the ceiling that Bradley Beal has on the Wizards. And they know that, okay, the Wizards are trying to trade Bradley Beal, so we're not going to give that much up for him. And Bradley Beal, at the end of the day, has the final say so. So it's like you're trading a star player, but you're not going to get star value for said player, which you're going to ask for. Don't get me wrong, but you're not going to get it because everyone and their mama knows you're trying to trade this player. That's just it. But the question is, where does Bradley Beal fit the most? And we've already explained, and we already know that Bradley Beal is not a number one player. However, not a number one player. However, we do know that if Bradley Beal was a 2 or Bradley Beal was a 3, that makes your team exponentially better because it takes a lot of the defensive attention that Bradley Beal would see as a 1. That's not there anymore. He doesn't get that type of attention. So the 3 teams that I can see, and their names, their names have been circulating throughout. So this is no breaking news. I think number 1 would probably be the Miami Heat if they can't get Damian Lillard. I think I went on. Shouts out to Dwayne Marcus. Shouts out to his podcast, the GOAT Talk podcast. I was on his podcast a couple of days ago, or maybe 2 or 3 days ago, and he was talking about. We were talking about the NBA Finals, and we were talking about why the Miami Heat essentially lost the NBA Finals. And I said, and it wasn't just me, the panel agreed, but I said that the Miami Heat didn't lose the NBA Finals because of defense. I know if you look at the numbers that Nikola Jokic had or Jamal Murray had, the Miami Heat did not lose the NBA Finals because of defense. They lost because they couldn't buy a 3. There was so many times when they were going through droughts, 2, 3, 4 minute droughts where they couldn't hit a bucket, which of course has been Miami all year, or was Miami all year. So it wasn't. They played really good defense. I know it's crazy when you look at the stats. They played really good defense on the entire Nuggets team. Bam Adebayo was probably the MVP for the Miami Heat in the finals because of how good he was defensively and how good he was offensively. And that's shocking for me to say because I didn't think it was possible. But if they would have hit their shots, I'm not going to say that they would have beat Denver, but there's a possibility they still could be playing. So you add Bradley Beal to this team. Now, yeah, you would probably have to lose Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero and maybe a draft pick or 2, but you get a high-level scorer. I mean, Bradley Beal, I think 2 years in a row, led the league in scoring. So you get that type of player on your team alongside Jimmy Butler, alongside Bam Adebayo. You have a championship caliber team on a team that just went to the championship. And I think they have they fare a lot better with Bradley Beal than without him. So the number 1 team, again, I think Damian Lillard would be obviously better, but from reports, it looks like Damian Lillard is unavailable. So I think Bradley Beal to Miami would be perfect. I think that would be the number 1 destination for him. Number 2, I would probably go Philly. No, that's a lie. Yeah, I'll go Philly, especially if they lose James Harden, which is more and as the days go by, it's looking more and more like James Harden might be out of Philly. If he's not, we'll talk about it, but it looks like you're going to lose James Harden. So you get Bradley Beal alongside Tyrese Maxey, alongside Joel Embiid, and Joel Embiid just won the MVP. That is a championship caliber team. And this is no shot to him. This is just fact. Unlike James Harden, you might not get the disappearance of Bradley Beal in the playoffs, or the regression that you get from James Harden in the playoffs. You might not get that from Bradley Beal. And it opens up your offense. Now, if I'm Washington, right, there's no way in heaven and hell I'm trading Bradley Beal. For the trade I saw was for Tobias Harris, I think Kuzma's or whatever his name is, and like a draft pick. Ain't no way in hell. If I don't get at least Tyrese Maxey, there's no conversation. But that's just me. So I think number 2 would probably be Philly, and number 3 would be I think would probably be the Bucks. Now, this is also, I think the Bucks have different, like, you need to prioritize re-signing Brook Lopez, need to try to prioritize re-signing Chris Middleton, and if that means that you lose out on Bradley Beal, then I understand. I mean, even without Bradley Beal, this team won a championship, just 2 years ago. So, but with Bradley Beal, one of the biggest indictments that we have or we see against the Milwaukee Bucks is they struggle mightily in half-court offense because while, yes, they having really good shooters, and I mean, you have Grayson Allen, you have Chris Middleton, you have Brook Lopez, they don't have a player that can really put the ball on the ground and get a solid jump shot outside of maybe Chris Middleton. But Chris Middleton's health has been on the decline as far as he's been hurt multiple times last few years. You add Bradley Beal, where that's his specialty, coming off of pick and roll and making something happen. That would open up so much for Giannis, which is a scary thing to think about. And that'll just open up so much for the entire Bucks team. I mean, now Drew Holiday his scoring is now a luxury outside of a need. Chris Middleton, if you don't have to give him up, that Chris Middleton along with Bradley Beal and Giannis, man, come on. So I think the 3 teams that would benefit the most from Bradley Beal's services would be the Heat number 1, Philly number 2, and the Bucks number 3. There's multiple teams. Like, if there's a way that I know that the Portland Trailblazers are trying to build through the draft or whatever, but if the Portland Trailblazers can get a Bradley Beal, that'd be something. That'd be crazy. Golden State, I understand that you probably have to give up Jordan Poole and Klay Thompson. I probably wouldn't do that after. I mean, I know we're killing Klay Thompson for what happened in the playoffs, but the majority of if you really look, Klay Thompson had the best regular season he's had in years this year. And actually, he had a pretty good not pretty good, but the first few games of the King series, he was okay. So I know he's not, Klay Thompson's not where he was, of course, before the injury defensively, but I mean, what do you expect? He injured both his ACLs. So, and if you trade him, Klay Thompson, for Bradley Beal, you're not getting the return defensively that you would hope. In fact, you'd be worse defensively. Now, yes, you would have another player that can put the ball on the ground, and Klay Thompson, that's not really his specialty. But you know what I'm saying? All I'm saying is this, and let me conclude this section. I think that this is maybe 4 or 5 years too late as far as Washington's side. I think they should have been, once you saw the ceiling for the John Wall, Bradley Beal team, and once you realize that Bradley Beal is not an A, and that's another thing. The worst thing you can do is build around a player that isn't a championship caliber player. And that's, again, I know this sounds like shots at Bradley Beal. It's not. One thing that you do not want to do, and one thing that can really set your franchise back, is building around a player that's not a championship caliber player. And as good and as great as Bradley Beal is, he is not that. I mean, you see it all the time. Teams, I mean, you talk about you talk about a quarterback-driven league, which I still, we talked about that last episode, but the Minnesota Vikings building around Kirk Cousins, the Giants building around Daniel Jones. Washington building around whoever the hell their quarterback is. Sam Howell. Like that's good. Your ceiling is, your ceiling is however good your best player is, or not best player, but the player that you're building around. So I think that it's 5 years too late, but I am interested to see where Bradley Beal goes. I think Bradley Beal is one of those he's one of those people that can change the trajectory of the NBA. Not saying that if he goes on a team, but like he can't go on like the Houston Rockets and they're automatic playoff. No, he can't go on the Orlando Magic and their automatic playoff team. No, but he could go to the Miami Heat and drastically change their chances of not only making it back to the NBA championship, but winning, or NBA finals, but winning one. Or he can drastically change the fortunes of maybe, say, a team like the Philadelphia 76ers. Maybe they finally get over the hump. You hearing about the Boston Celtics? Imagine now, you have to give up Jaylen Brown and somebody, but imagine that drastically changes, in my opinion. I think Bradley Beal is better than Jaylen Brown. That changes the way that we look at the Boston Celtics. Now, yes, I think Boston ultimately needs a point guard, but you get Bradley Beal, that's different, So I'm interested to see. Exactly what happens with Bradley Beal, and I think that he has the potential to change the landscape of the league next year, depending on which team he ultimately goes to. So I'm not gonna stay on this for too long, but the verdict, we know about about Ja Morant and everything that's gone on this offseason, or with the whole gun situation 2 times. And I said what I had to say when it first happened, so I'm not gonna elaborate on it. The punishment came out, and Ja Morant is getting 25 games. Now, you know what this Ja Morant situation has kind of shown me and proven to me? To me, we are living in a punishment crazed society. And what I mean by that is, while yes, I agree that Ja Morant should be punished or should have been punished for what he did. And it's not, I hear a lot of the people talk about the Second Amendment. I hear all that. But again, you're working for if your job doesn't allow something, that's your job. And the NBA is a privately run organization that is able to make their rules. And when Ja Morant does what he does, which is in direct violation of the NBA's rules, of course punishment is going to happen. But what this situation has shown me is, people want the harshest punishment for people. And don't get me wrong, I understand punishment is important, because punishment a lot of times is the only way that you can learn a lesson. But people are literally upset that Ja Morant only got 25 games. Now, do I think 25 games is light? On the surface, yes, it's light. I was thinking upwards of 40 to 50 games, especially with the whole it's a toy gun thing. I was like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's gonna be, they're gonna make an example out of Ja. And again, on the surface, I think 25 games isn't a lot of games until you really look at the ramifications that this 25 games holds. Next year, the CBA came to the agreement that you have to play a certain number of games to be eligible for all NBA teams, and I think all-star games and stuff like that. And of course, with a lot of players, in fact, most players, you get compensation and you get contract bonuses if you hit these marks. Like last year, I think this year, John Morant missed out on like $38 million or $30 million or something because he did not make an All-NBA team, which he would have made if he wasn't suspended because of this whole gun situation. Now you're getting suspended 25 games, and because of CBA, you have to play a certain number of games, and with John Morant missing out or not being able to hit those marks playing that many games, he is not eligible to be on the All-NBA teams again. So he's going to miss out on even more money. So not only will he miss, I think he's coming back during Christmas or maybe Christmas Day, but you're ineligible now to be on the NBA team, so your pockets are getting hit yet again. I think this is probably right. I think I probably was a little reactionary and overboard about what I thought was going to happen, but I did forget. I think if the whole game stipulation didn't happen, like if you could miss 50 games and still be eligible for an All-NBA team, I think that 40 to 50 games might have been at play. But when you look at 25 and you say, oh, well, he now can't even be on an All-NBA, all defense, all anything because he doesn't play enough games, I understand. So I hope that, John Morant released a statement saying he's sorry and learned from it. I hope that, this is a sign of changed behavior because if not, the NBA ain't gonna keep playing with you. But yeah, that's I wish nothing but the best for John Morant, and he has 25 games. And while yes, on the surface, 25 games seems light, when you look at the entire scope and the ramifications of those 25 games, at least this year, it makes sense. And the example is clear, especially with the new CBA. The example is clear. We're not going to keep playing with you, especially when you're playing in our face. So let's move forward. I'm not going to stay on this for long either, but Michael Jordan agreed to sell his majority stake of the Hornets ownership, or the ownership of the Hornets, for like $3 billion, which is huge for, I guess, his legacy. No, it's not. Well, I will say this is what Michael Jordan is when we talk about basketball player, that is a legacy in and of itself. But when we talk about owner, Michael Jordan will go down as one of the worst owners in basketball. Michael Jordan, there's been multiple times where his decision making has drastically affected the lack of success that there has been for the Hornets. And when your owner has as much say as Michael Jordan has had for the Charlotte Bobcats and Charlotte Hornets, that's going to be a blemish. And trust and believe, Michael Jordan has had a huge impact on every single move that the Hornets have done. Even changing names. And it's also big for the African American community, because Michael Jordan was the only black owner, even though, black majority stakes owner in basketball. And now with him selling it, there is none. Now, there's minority owners, but minority owners and majority owners, there's drastic differences. Like, you don't really have a say-so when you're a minority owner. When you're a majority owner, you can, as we've seen with Michael Jordan, you can make moves. So I think this is big for basketball in general. I think this is big for, African Americans in ownership, and I hope that this doesn't hinder black owners or black groups or black African Americans trying to in the future own a team. Because I don't want to say, well, if Michael Jordan can't do it, we're not doing that. But I guess I will also say shout out to Michael Jordan, because you're $3 billion up on a team. You're $3 billion up selling a team that hasn't really been good. Now, yes, a lot of the reasons why they haven't been good is because of your decision making, but they have not been good, at all. They had a couple Kimba years. Of course, they have LaMelo Ball, and they have this number 2 overall pick, which they may or may not draft there. But I guess shouts out to Michael Jordan for selling the team. And also, Michael Jordan will go down as one of the worst owners in basketball history. I don't look at him any differently. Because, like I said, his NBA basketball playing career is different than his ownership career. But, when we talk about the totality of Michael Jordan and when we want to tell you the whole story, this has to be included. And he was not good at being an owner. So, shouts out to Michael Jordan. Shouts out to the Hornets. And shouts out to Gabe Plotkin and Rick Schnell. Those were the two leaders of a group, or the leaders of the group that bought the majority stake of the Hornets. So let's move forward. This was sneaky big news. The Golden State Warriors find themselves in a place that they've never been. Now, before people jump in my comments, I understand that Golden State has been bad. More years of their existence than they've been good. There were some incredibly low days in the Golden State Warriors organization back in the day. I get that. They were one of the worst franchises in the NBA. And I also understand that the last few years, they have been incredible. They had the We Believe. Then they had Steph Curry and the dynasty that was and possibly is the Golden State Warriors. So when I say that they are currently in a position in a place that they've never been in, what I'm saying is I don't think they've ever been in a position where they go from historically great, they have a possibility to go from historically great to incredibly mediocre in one offseason. There's moves that have to be. We talked about Bob Myers, and we talked about how I felt it was incredibly important to try your hardest to retain Bob Myers. And they ultimately weren't able to do that. There are so many decisions, especially with the new CBA in the first and second apron, which has dire consequences being in that second apron. And pretty much this new CBA and the whole aprons and everything is in direct results, or is a direct result of the spending habits that the Golden State Warriors have, and the fact of they have not cared about the scoring limit, or the scoring, or the spending limits in the salary cap. They have not cared about the salary cap because they understand if we pay the salary cap, or we pay as whatever the penalties are, and it ultimately ends up as a championship, it's all worth it. So the new CBA was like, oh yeah, we can't keep doing that. This new CBA rules is pretty much built to break up the Golden State Warriors. And we saw the first domino fall, which of course was Bob Myers. So when I say that the Golden State Warriors are in a spot they've never been in before, in one of the most important off seasons of their franchise, they have to make their decisions. Their current decisions is going to drastically affect the entire franchise moving forward. And I think that it started with, of course, losing Bob Myers. But I think the first big move that they made, which was really smart, was hiring Mike Dunleavy Jr. as the GM. I mean, he's been with the organization for God knows how long. He studied under Bob Myers. He was pretty much on that staff. And you want to get someone that's familiar with the culture, that's familiar with the team, that's familiar with the stars. You want to get somebody I don't know how his decision making is going to be, because, I mean, there's a difference between an assistant coach and a head coach. We've seen that time and time again. There's a difference between like an assistant GM or an assistant to the GM and a GM, or president of basketball scouting and president of basketball operations are two completely different things. So I don't know how Mike Dunleavy is going to be, as far as with that in that position. But I do think that it was smart that you hire someone that's in-house that at least seems competent enough to make the right decisions. Now, yes, you have to. I think it's very imperative to try to get a deal done with Draymond Green, and hopefully he's able to take less. I heard Brian Windhorst talk about this, and it was incredibly smart, and I totally forgot about this. What the Golden State Warriors are hoping, and what you hope as a Golden State Warriors fan in hopes of extending this dynasty, is Andrew Wiggins, after playing the best he's ever played, of course being a very key component to Golden State ultimately winning a championship last year, he got paid, but he also took a team-friendly pay cut. What the Golden State Warriors is hoping is that Draymond Green and Klay Thompson see this, and they also see how this year ended and takes the same type of pay cut. Now, I also understand that Klay Thompson and Draymond Green have attributed to more championships and more of a winning legacy than Andrew Wiggins has, but you see what I'm saying. And then, of course, you're going to have to see if you can trade a Jonathan Kuminga or trade a Jordan Poole to try to get under that salary cap. So there are so many decisions that Golden State needs to make as a whole team, not just as the front office. But you need a competent person in the front office as the GM to make tough decisions and to understand the culture and build on the culture. And I think Mike Dunleavy Jr. has shown that he is the right guy for the job. Of course, we'll have to see, but at least right now, I think that it was a very smart hire. And lastly, before we go, I wanted to shout out Team USA for beating Mexico to advance to the Concacaf Nations League Finals. Now, yes, they beat Mexico 3-0, and at the end it was crazy. They had red cards all over the place. I think it was like 4 red cards. The crowd was yelling homophobic obscenity. It was ugly. But Team USA, the men's Team USA, did ultimately win and advance the Concacaf Nations League Finals. I think when we talk about soccer, right, or football, however you want to call it, however you deem it, there is a obvious ceiling when we talk about both the men's and the women's soccer. I think the ceiling obviously is higher for the women's soccer than it is for the men's. I could see, we know how good the women's team has been, and especially when we talk about the World Cup, the women's soccer or women's football U.S. women's football is the cream of the crop when we talk about the world. When we talk about, they're always in contention in World Series, and it's actually kind of a shock if they don't win the World Series. And as far as the men's, however, football, when we talk about the men's side, is drastically better in different countries, and different players. Hell, I didn't talk about on this show Messi going to Miami, and how he has drastically changed the outlook and changed the popularity and increased the popularity of the MLS just with him being in Miami. And it's, when we talk about Argentina, Portugal, Brazil, France, Germany, there's multiple teams that are drastically better than Team USA men's national team. And when we talk about, some of the smaller, I'm not going to say less important, but some of the less known tournaments like the Concacaf, where you have a shot of winning, I think this is the ceiling that Team USA men's national team should live in and should thrive in. Christian Pulisic, I think he had like 2 goals. He's one of the best football players in the entire world. He is one of the best. However, when we talk about Cristiano, when we talk about Ronaldo, when we talk about Mbappe, when we talk about Lionel Messi, when we talk about Neymar, it's like, ooh, So all I'm saying is this, man. Congratulations to the men's for making it to the Concacaf Nationals League final, and I hope that they ultimately win it all. But this is the realm that they should live in, and this is the realm where they should definitely thrive in. This is where they are at their best. So, shouts out to them. Shout out to them. And there you have it, man. That's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want a Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to if you're listening. Please subscribe to if you're watching. I'm trying to get to 1,000 YouTube subscribers by my birthday. I don't know if it's going to happen. My birthday is July 20th. I'm trying to get there. I think I'm at 833. So I'll appreciate all the help. I keep pushing out content daily, pretty much new episodes every Wednesday and Saturday, of course. But if you can, please help. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. But it definitely means a lot to me. And again, I'm trying to hit my goal of 1,000, which, by the way, never really thought that was an accomplishable goal when I first started this. Let me add that. But I'm trying to reach the goal of 1,000 YouTube subscribers by my birthday, and I'm at like 833. So anything would help. Also, please subscribe to or follow the social medias. Follow the Instagram, follow the TikTok. Again, I pretty much, if you want to have a conversation with me, I'm pretty much in the YouTube comments as well, but if you comment on any response you get from the Unpopular Podcast page is me personally. It's all me. So definitely follow Instagram, TikTok. Please subscribe to the YouTube. It definitely means a lot to me, man. And until next time, much love.